My Lords, we've gone via all kinds of highways, byways, Aunt Sallies and red herrings. But the central issue of this amendment is, in the words of my noble friend Lord Leicester, who's the master, ministers or Parliament? And the noble Viscount Lord Hilsham insisted that it was the implementation of taking back control for Parliament, and it shouldn't be taking back control for the executive. Parliament should be in charge, in the driving seat. And there have been various criticisms of the amendment which seem to me to be more properly directed at the Prime Minister's assurance in the White Paper, because, and I think the noble Lord Pannick originally used this phrase, it gives the Prime Minister what she asked for. And to call, in the words of the noble Lord Hill of Orford, that it adds to the complexity, and noble Lord Tugendhat said it made it more complicated and muddied the waters. Well then, why did the Prime Minister pledge approval by both Houses of Parliament? As the noble Lord Cormac said, and I think the noble Lady Baroness Mackintosh, this is putting an assurance, an undertaking given by the Prime Minister into a statutory obligation, and it is wise and sensible so to do. And there is no basis whatsoever for the assertion made variously by noble Lord Lawson, Lord Forsyth, and the Right Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of York, that it would give this House a veto. The government, given that the Prime Minister offered to give approval by both Houses of Parliament, presumably the Prime Minister, and she shared this with the government, knows how that would work. And it is for the government to deal with that process, which could, of course, as other noble lords have mentioned, be avoided if there was primary legislation, because then the rules are clear. The noble Lady Baroness Stowell counsels against an amendment that gives Parliament power, which I found a strange piece of advice. Surely Parliament has the right to such power as we possess under the Constitution, but it seems to be that it's not normal to have parliamentary power in some kind of parallel universe that Brexit has created. It does not weaken the government's bargaining position. The statement, "I've got to get it past my legislators," is perfectly good enough for a US president or EU negotiators, and it should be more than good enough for the British Parliament. The noble Lord Hill said that our EU partners read our debates. Yes, they might well do, and they will in this case. But they know that we in this Parliament want a really substantial content to a future relationship. We might even stiffen the government's backbone in the negotiations. And I agree with the noble Lady Baroness Simons of Vernon Dean that getting the best deal and parliamentary sovereignty, far from being in conflict, go hand in hand. Finally, Brexiteers seem to claim that this is a wicked plot by Remainers. But in fact, some of them seem to find Parliament an inconvenient obstacle to their dream of crashing out of the EU altogether, because they want the government to be able to action no deal, and they don't want Parliament to be able to say, hang on, is that actually a good idea? And that is why this amendment is extremely valid. Yeah. My Lords, we've gone via all kinds of highways, byways, Aunt Sallies and red herrings. But the central issue of this amendment is, in the words of my noble friend Lord Leicester, who's the master, ministers or Parliament? And the noble Viscount Lord Hilsham